Carson Wentz has reportedly been traded from the Colts to the Commanders. Indy will get a couple third-round picks over the next 2 years in exchange, and it'll be the third team in 3 years for Wentz. So, Geoff, do you think Wentz will be better in Washington than he was in Indianapolis? Also, fun fact, if Wentz starts week 1, he'll become the first quarterback since 1950, when the records were first tracked, to start on opening weekend for 3 different teams in 3 years before turning 30.
That's an amazing stat, and it kind of speaks to the fact that maybe Carson Wentz is just really good at burning bridges. From a performance standpoint, I think that you may see a little bit of an uptick from Carson Wentz from a fantasy perspective. Washington is not Indianapolis since they don't have Jonathan Taylor. They have a good offensive line, but they're not as good as running the ball as Indianapolis, and I think that will probably show through in Carson Wentz's passing volume this year. I think he hit a lot last year behind Jonathan Taylor, and when it really came down to crunch time, he didn't really do anything too impressive from a metric standpoint, and I think he's going to be forced into doing more for the Washington Commanders next year because they're going to need him to do that. And I don't really think it's going to work out that well, quite frankly. So what we've seen from Carson Wentz is that he's injury prone. He doesn't have the greatest accuracy, and he's not really a good leader. So no, I don't really see this working out too well. You may get a little bit more fantasy juice from him because he's going to be throwing the ball more, in my opinion. But even in that perspective, Carson Wentz's best days likely behind him here. I definitely don't like this move from a real life perspective, with the leadership issues and with the contract they're taking on. So not very bullish here for the Washington Commanders. I think they would have been better served just going with the cheaper backup option for at least one more year.
Pearce, do you think Wentz will be better in Washington? Injury-prone player, like Geoff said, and this field has definitely doled out some injuries.
No, this is terrible. This is just absolutely terrible. Washington would have been better suited to keep Heineke and keep the draft picks, or go sign Trubisky and keep the draft picks. Now you've got Wentz and his terrible contract. And the Colts had an above-average line last season, and still Wentz was hit the second most of any quarterback. When he played for a bad offensive line in Philadelphia, 12 games in 2020, got sacked 50 times. Washington does not have really a good offensive line. I would say it's a below-average offensive line, and he'll get injured or he'll perform poorly. They were better suited to have a quarterback that could scramble and move around in Heineke, have a quarterback like Trubisky that can move around. Wentz can't move. We've seen it the last 2 seasons. He's not as mobile as he once was, and he's just under assault constantly. Terrible move.
Yeah, Reid, the Washington Commanders' odds movement after the Wentz trade. So to win the Super Bowl, they were plus 5,000. Then they're plus 4,000. To win the NFC, plus 2,500. Then plus 2,000. To win the NFC East, plus 500 to plus 400. So, like, a little bit of a bump there.
Yeah, because even though these guys are bashing on Wentz, which is true, it's valid, he's better than Heineke. I get that we saw Heineke, and we always go back to Heineke can run, and he played some really good games, so we forget about all the bad games that Heineke also played, with the Washington Commanders last year and the years previous, right? Like that's the thing, that he is an upgrade at quarterback from Heineke. From an entire landscape, no, I agree with these guys. It's a bad play. It's a bad call by the Commanders to bring on Wentz and then to trade away draft picks to get him. Like, people are still trying to relive Carson Wentz a few years ago before he got that ACL injury late in the season when he was having an MVP type season. But after that, the guy's decision making is one of the worst in the league. If you take a look at his first 7 games with Indy, he was playing extremely conservative football. He was a good quarterback because he wasn't asked to do a lot. When he was asked to do a lot, he had like the 7th worst turnover worthy plays in the NFL. That's Carson Wentz. So bad move on a landscape, but an upgrade of the quarterback position.